Hello, I'm Esme Murphy with WCCO TV, and this is Talking Points. Today we're going to be hearing a farm point of view on the current trade war and soaring tariffs. As the trade war rages, uncertainty is the word you hear mostly from small farmers on up to major agribusinesses. The USDA estimates farmers lost $27 billion in exports during the 2018-2019 trade war. The Minnesota Farmers Union does not provide specific membership numbers. However, the National Farmers Union, of which MFU is a part, represents over 220,000 family farmers and ranchers in 33 states. And I'm very grateful to Gary Wertish, the president of the Minnesota Farmers Union, for joining me here. And your family has had a farm near Renville and still does for 80-some years now.
That'd be correct.
Well, that is congratulations to you. We certainly are grateful for farmers like you who have been able to keep the process going. You farm, and your son is the main farmer now, soybeans. How are you doing right now?
Well, it's a challenge. We rent to my son, one of our sons, and my wife and I, and I still help him as I'm able to, but it's a challenge. Right now, it's very uncertain times, and the president's starting another round of tariff wars or trade wars. It couldn't come at a worse time because farmers at the present time, with the high input costs and the low commodity prices, it's tough to cash flow on a farm. I've talked to various farm business managers that keep records, and we're showing, they're having, and every farm is going to be different. Your cost of production is going to be different, but for the average, for the most part, the farmers, the prices we're selling at are lower than our costs of inputs.
We're taping this on Wednesday, April 9th, at, let's see, just at 1 o'clock. Yep. And the president has just paused almost most of the tariffs for most countries. It's not clear exactly which countries, but except the tariffs for China are going up to 125%. We have many soybean farmers here in Minnesota, including you and your family. What's the impact of that?
Well, the impact is, China's our soybeans, for example. We export approximately half of our soybeans from the United States and Minnesota that goes to China directly. And I just saw a recent report from the American Soybean Association that the way the tariffs are right now, if it goes in effect and continues, they expect the farmers to lose $5.9 billion a year, every year. With this, and really it drives down the price of our soybeans, the commodities, and it incentivizes China, or it incentivizes the Brazilian and Argentina farmers, primarily Latin American, and China has invested when he did the previous trade or tariff war in 2018-19 in his first term. China invested in a lot of infrastructure in Brazil.
For soybeans.
Exactly. So it's a direct investment in our competitors. I mean, and that's definitely taken away from our markets. Presently we're selling less soybeans to China now than we did before he did the first trade war. And
you estimated the loss at over $5 billion. Is that for the entire country?
That'd be for the entire country. That's a lot of money. You get pretty close to $6 billion. That's all money that doesn't end up going into the rural communities, and that's where it hits not only farmers, but it's going to hit everybody too, and hit rural communities hardest.
You told me that there are going to be farmers who are going to lose their farms because of what has just happened in the last week or so. Can you explain that?
Well, I believe that because as I said earlier, the margins are very low now. So if you're a smaller or beginning farmer, a younger farmer that's not established, doesn't have a lot of, they're the ones that don't have a lot of equity. With these tough margins, they're going to have a hard time. I talked to the Minnesota Department of Ag, and farm mediations are way up over what they had been a year, even last year, dramatically increased, and it's only we're in April now. So in the farm mediation, that's, under state law, the banker can't foreclose on the farmer. He's got to offer mediation first, and sometimes they can work through it. But that just shows you the stress that's out there on the individual farms.
If you could say something to President Trump right now on behalf of Minnesota farmers, what would you say?
Well, it's all this uncertainty. You got to have some reality too. It's starting the trade war. The tariffs, it seems to be the president's go-to language right now. It's just going to straighten everything out. But you got to, they talk about the trade deficits. And now we're picking on Canada and Mexico. They're our top two trading partners of the United States. China comes in third. They were our neighbors, and you look at it and they say the trade deficit, the population of Canada is about 41 million, That's about the population of California. You know, we have 330 million in the United States. There's about 130 million in Mexico. Those people can't buy as much from us because they don't have the population. So we do need to export to them, and that. So you got to have a little reality too. It's it's good sound bites and sounds great, sounds tough, but the hurt is real.
Yeah, and you're saying these trade deficits, in some ways, they have to exist because of the population discrepancies between like a Canada and is it fair to say that most farmers are upset right now or concerned?
It's hard to know. I would say it's more awareness is coming. You know, you still have a lot of people, there's still a number of farmers that say, well, it's going to work out in the end. But a lot of it goes back to when he did the first trade war in 2018 and 19. They paid the farmers about $28 billion in market facilitation payments. They took it out of the Commodity Credit Corporation.
This is the bailout. So the losses from the trade war under the first Trump administration, there needed to be a bailout for farmers to keep them afloat. That's
correct, but it didn't make them whole. It didn't make them 100% whole because we've lost a certain amount of our export market that we haven't gotten back. So it didn't make him whole. You know, it is very politically, it was smart for him. He made sure his name was on the bottom of the check. So you still, there's concern, put it that way. But there's still a lot of farmers figure, well, it will work out. But my concern is it'll work out for who, and that's where I worry about the ones that don't have the equity. They might, this is not going to work out well for them.
Okay, I've got to ask you this. I mean, a lot of people are going to say, well, if it weren't for the farmers, President Trump probably would not have gotten elected. Doesn't President Trump owe a great deal to farmers, and should he be listening more to them?
Well, he should definitely be listening more. There's no doubt about that, because you get a lot, I think, whether it's the commodity groups, everybody's concerned with the disruption in trade, and that's what he's doing with the tariff trade wars. It's just total disruption and, chaos. And the other thing we're worried about is the long-term gain. Well, this is causing a long-term damage. It's destroying our trust as a reliable trading partner. In the United States, in Minnesota, we produce more than we can consume domestically. I know the president earlier, when he addressed Congress, he said, farmers, we're going to sell everything domestically, have fun. Well, we have to export. And export, we can't turn the clock back years back, but we're fortunate enough to produce more than we can consume.
When you said you believe that farmers will go under, that we'll lose some family farms because of what's happening right now, do you have an estimate of how many, and would they be right here in Minnesota?
Well, definitely, there's no doubt. How many, the sign of mediation that's running through the Minnesota Department, I think that's a good barometer. Them numbers are substantially up. Well, some of those in that mediation, some of them they'll maybe work out an agreement with the bank and stay on the farm.
How many do you know, or roughly?
Well, the last I heard, there was well over 1,000 in mediation.
Okay, with the bankers to try and work some.
And I think a year ago there was only like 300 or 400 for the whole year. So it's dramatically, and we're only in the beginning of February, or February or April now.
Right. What would you like people to know who are seeing this?
Well,
who aren't farmers.
Yeah, this is it's not only affecting farmers, but it's going to affect everybody. It's all the consumers are raising the price of food, and it's and the farmers are not, they're the ones that are going to get. Obviously, we get hit the hardest right now because our tariff wars. In China are really primarily hitting hard on China right now, and Canada, for one example, we import potash. That's a crop nutrient. We don't have it in Minnesota, so we have to import it. So that increases the price.
And where are you importing that from?
That majority of that all comes from Canada.
Okay.
The vast majority within the United States does come from Canada because they have the potash mines there. But all them increased costs will at some point be passed on. The tariff
to the consumer.
To the consumer, it's a tax. The president keeps saying that, and they might get to our general or into the government, but the companies that are doing the importing, that'll all be passed on as a tax. So you and I will both be paying our share as he buys products.
All right. Well, Gary, we really appreciate your insights. Somehow I feel like we're going to be coming back to you quite a bit because so much is changing so quickly. But thank you very much. We really appreciate it. That does it for this edition of Talking Points. I want to let you know that you can always email me at esme@cbs.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Esme Murphy, WCCO TV.